Hello, my name is Carson Hof. It is June 16th. This is devlog number 4 for Project Blue. This past week, I've been working on kind of fleshing out how the system interacts and interprets hit collisions. Um, so I've undone a few of the nodes here just so I can kind of walk through it in a step-by-step flow to what I implemented here. So I'll just go ahead and run it. First thing I did was I implemented just the ability to spawn a hitbox on the player character by hitting T, which you can see there. The hitbox is currently assigned, all the hitboxes are assigned owners, and the way a hitbox collision is interpreted is if the owners are different when they intersect, which is why when I hit jab, even though you can see there is that, that red intersecting with the green, there's no debug message in the top left like there is here, hitbox collision detected. That's because it's being assigned that hitbox, even though I'm spawning it on my player character, the guy on the left, it's being assigned to the person on the right. So that was the first step here. The second piece, this is not really chronologically how I worked on it, but I think it's the most logical way to see it. The second thing we'll talk about is you notice that it has two messages, and that's because it's intersecting with both that top and bottom hitbox, hurtbox I should say, of the player character. The idea is naturally that I don't want them to be counted individually. I don't want, if a hitbox happens to cross both, I would want for just one hit to be acquired. And I'm only using two just because that gives a slightly more accurate drawing of the silhouette of the character. So the next thing I worked on was an idea for nullifying how the hitboxes, or nullifying hitboxes once one intersection occurs. So that led me to an approach where I added a new struct called a hit. What did I call it? I called it a hit group. And I'll be the first one to call out that is a kind of terrible name. But it's doing a couple things, and it's hard to make something that is both descriptive and concise. So this is what I landed on. The hit group is sort of responsible for two main things, which is it stores kind of the metadata of the hit, and here are some examples. There's damage, there's stun frames, there's block frames. The distinction here being is if you hit a character, they're going to be unable to move for a second. That's what I'm calling stunning. That's what I'm referring to as stun. And if you hit them while they're blocking, then the same is also true, but typically those numbers are different and don't necessarily scale in a direct manner. And another one is stun type. Stun type, in the way I'm using it, is to mean how the character reacts. Um, I I think it would be useful for visuals for one thing. If a really hard hit strikes the player character, having their hit reaction differ will be good for selling the hit. But it also has mechanical implications. Some moves might leave the character in a crumpled state. A crumpled state meaning that they are still grounded, but they're unable to act and they're further comboable. I'd say that's a pretty common system mechanic you'll find in most fighting games, at least ones that I played. So these don't really have a ton of mechanical implementation yet. None of them really do. They're just stubs. But I wanted to kind of mock out what this object should be. So for now, the struct has this quote-unquote data that isn't really being used. The second quality though isn't actually in the struct, but it's more like a state that I'm capturing about the group, which is being stored actually as just a variable on the object that is being built with that data. So it's it's a very tiny object, but I'll just pull it up. Oh, this is it. Okay. And that is nullified. So this is actually the implemented part, I would say, of the hit group currently, and it's most important. You can see it's very much a tiny little piece here, but it's literally all it needs. Basically, the hitbox is now okay. So I showed that's what the hit groups are, but in addition, another change I've made. I'm looking at the jab. Go to the first one, which is where I have the actual jab, the the jab, you know, the active hitbox, the damage portion. They all have a hit group, although if they're a hurt box, they're gonna be -1 because they don't obviously have like damage values for those. But for this first one, which is the actual punch, it actually has a hit group of 0. And this punch is not a good example of like why you need a hit group, but what it or like why hit groups need to be like an array like this, right? Because looking at this, it's kind of like why have an array, you know? Why not just have a single hit group? And the answer is just because sometimes there'll be multi-hit moves, you know. E Honda's 100 slaps or Chun-Li's lightning kicks or whatever, you know, anything where there'll be a series of strikes. It's like you want each of those strikes to potentially count even if a previous one hit, but you don't want any of those strikes to hit multiple hitboxes just because they happen to overlap with multiple, even, you know, for the same character. So I feel like this will be useful when I get to like multi-hit moves, but for now it's like a slightly unusual pattern. But anyway, hitboxes now are associated with a hit group, and so in order to combat the issue, or like to resolve the issue of like how do we make sure hitboxes or active frames aren't being counted multiple times when they hit 2 or more hurt boxes, is we now set that we now reference that hit group when we're doing like our validation for the hitbox. So that looks like this. We're already doing stuff like, are we, you know, is the hitbox intersecting with a hurt box? And I forget where the logic is to actually confirm that it's a different owner. But anyway, the new change here is that we're nullifying once we have any one intersection. So now that I've just re-enabled that node, we'll go ahead and hit play, and you'll see now both that there's like that kind of hard to read purple message announcing the nullification, but we're also only getting one collision now, one hitbox collision. So that solves that issue. I was super happy how cleanly that came together. That was like such a miracle. It felt like things never worked the first try, but that was the exception. So the next thing naturally is actually having the hit reaction react. One of the things I did this past week was I actually did like a small animation for it. This is the first thing I actually worked on chronologically, but looking back is kind of silly because it's just so far behind other things that I needed to do to make it work. But here it is. I'm just hooking it up now to, actually I'll just talk about this real quick. I have a handle hit event that now lives on the player character, and that just feeds into this new configure montage. Configure montage is me kind of slightly refactoring how I run montages. You can see I've also got it up here now for the far jab. But basically it just needs to know a name for like how they should react, and it will then step in here. It'll do a lookup, retrieving the item, breaking it out, you know, pulling the montage, pulling the hitboxes, pulling the hit groups, and, you know, basically generating what it was already doing before, but just now it's a little more programmatic, more accessible for what my use case is. So so currently this is kind of you can see I'm just hard coding standing hit reaction. In the future there will definitely be, oh, sorry, let's just demo it. I can talk about what I want to do next after that. I did not enable it, did I? Box. Here we go. Handle hit. Yeah, so this is what I talk about. These are all stubs. I'm kind of like pretending to pass it along into this handle hit, but then I'm just dropping it. It doesn't really matter yet, but I'll talk about how it'll be used in the future. So we have this, and if I hit T, boom, you can see that the player character is reacting, and the hurt box that surrounds them is actually morphing as well, because just like the jab, it has all those additional, I mean, it's one different heart box, and it's being played for the course of the montage. Let's see. So yeah, returning to that point, is talking about there will definitely need to be sort of a logical check as far as how we get this name. because I said a light stun type versus a heavy might have different animations, so that'll be a factor for the montage name. If the player character is airborne, that'll have a change. Um, I suppose there will need to be a check. For instance, if the damage would kill the player character, I don't want them to. Ideally, they wouldn't react like this and then fall over. They would just collapse. So those are the types of like logical checks that'll have to be handled in some sort of like function or macro in this space. But for now, I'm just hard setting it here because I don't have all those extra animations to even like play around with. Um, let's see. Another change that'll need to be handled in the future is how the state priority is being done. It might just be a small tweak, but I don't have it such that this is properly locking you out from other actions. When you jab and you try and hold left or right, you can see you're kind of locked in. But that's not the case for the reaction. I haven't actually dug very deep into this yet. I thought I had to implement like state priority implemented in a way that it would be easily like resolved already, but there's still something here to be looked at. So, um, yeah. That about covers hit reactions. Those are probably like the two things. The two things I just called out are probably like what I want to work on. Well, I don't know. I'll probably like sideline these pieces here because I think that damage isn't useful until I have like some element of like some concept of health. Stun frame. Okay, so stun frame is an interesting one, right? It's you don't think about it like consciously necessarily, but like different hits often have they in like a balanced fighting game are gonna have like variable amounts of like stun, right? If you have like a big meaty like overhead slam or whatever, you would expect it to stun the enemy a little bit longer. But also, you probably have more recover frames, so that like the difference isn't like colossally different between the player characters. Like you're a little advantaged, I wager, for a move like that. But the point is, you want to sell that impact, which means that if that's the case, it would be beneficial if you could then programmatically adjust how long a montage plays, which is something that's the next thing I would actually really like to look into, and I've kind of started already, but um, still not there. But ideally, I could make it so that like if the other character does a jab like this, my character is not going to have this super exasperated hit reaction where they're stunned for like a full second or whatever, right? Like that's like disproportionate for the investment. I think in theory, I don't know. I'm trying to imagine both these animations like in sequence. You probably couldn't sunlock someone, but like it would be kind of close, and that seems obviously like ridiculously strong for a jab. Of course, there'll be pushback too, so I'm like getting ahead of myself. But anyway, what I would like to work on is a way to have that stun duration scale with a value that's being stored now on the hit group. And then I'll need a bunch of other animations to kind of like do much more. I need to have a concept of blocking. I need to have health, as I already said. Yeah. Another thing that I want to work on, it's something I kind of like, I don't have it on that like design chart, but I'm gonna add up at least like one broad block, is the idea of like hit particles. Kind of like slipped my mind, but on fighting games, it's very common to have like pretty exaggerated like hit spark and such whenever like a blow makes connection, and that does a lot to sort of cover up the seams, if it were. When an attack lands and a character reacts, it's like if you really look at it like frame by like slowly or frame by frame, whatever. Oftentimes the reactions don't make sense because it's not like they animate every potential interaction that a character punching or kicking or whatever the other player could have on their body. It's usually like a very generic, just like a flinch. But when you have hit sparks, also another thing is like if they move back really hard, really fast like this, like too fast, it can look a little disorienting because you're like if he's leaned super far back, right? If the punch like just barely grazes his head right now, and then he's leaned back like this, it would actually kind of look like a whiff. So you have like that hit spark there, and it's like, oh, okay, it sounds like where the connection was. So a hit spark would be a really cool feature that I want to implement next, and it would let me work in particles, which I haven't done anything with. I don't even know what that's like. So that might be where I turn next once I've done a little bit more with this hit reaction and the state priority cleanup. So that's where I'm headed. As always, thank you for watching.